right, we get it rolling on the Krueg Show. Day 2 of the NFL Draft. Coming up later today, rounds 2 and 3. We are brought to you by Pig and a Pickle. Check them out. Pig and a Pickle, the proud sponsor of the Krueg Show. Check them out in 2 locations. They're in Corte Madera and Emeryville. They're open 7 days a week in Corte Madera from 11 a.m. to 8 p.m. Open Wednesday through Sunday in Emeryville. Pig and a Pickle, the best barbecue in all of Northern California. Get the brisket. All right, say hi to Damon, say hi to Mary, and tell them that Krueg sent you. All right, we're talking Niners, day 2 of the draft. Niners didn't pick in day 1. Jack Hammer is here from the Santa Rosa Press-Democrat, who does a great job covering the 49ers. Jack, good to see you, man. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me, Larry. Good to see you, too.
Yeah, good to see you. Glad to have you. And what do you think? I mean, what do you think of last night's round 1 of the draft?
I thought it was interesting. It was a lot of fun. I was surprised by some of the moves. Surprised by so much moving and shaking at the top of the draft. So that was kind of cool. And then it kind of settled down a little bit. I thought that you look at it, and the one team that involves the 49ers that really I felt did a good job last night to improve themselves was the Seattle Seahawks. I really think they did a good job last night.
Well, yeah, I did too. Devin Witherspoon. Let's talk about what Seattle did. They had the 5th pick, and they went with Devin Witherspoon out of the Illini, and just this guy is just a really good player. I mean, and now they've got, you got Tariq Woolen, you got Kobe Bryant, you've got Devin Witherspoon. They're kind of creating their own Legion of Boom Part 2. They had Chancellor and Earl Thomas and Brandon Browner, Richard Sherman, and what an incredible group that was. And now they're kind of recreating that. I really loved Witherspoon. I thought he was far and away the best corner in this draft. If you watch the Illini, he's great against the run. He's very physical. He's one of the true alphas in this draft, and I thought that was a great pick. The Buckeyes receiver, I guess I've got to be convinced a little bit more on him, just because the Buckeyes always have great receivers, and sometimes they play well at the next level, sometimes they don't. Jackson Smith-Njigba, not the biggest receiver, not the fastest receiver, but very talented. And now you got DK Metcalf, and you've got obviously Tyler Lockett, and you add this guy to the mix. So suddenly Seattle's better on the perimeter on both sides of the ball. Would you say Seattle is the primary contender in the NFC West, or are they the number 1 contender if the Niners are if the Niners are number 1, because they were this year in the division, is Seattle number 2?
Yeah, Seattle's the competition. The Rams, they're down. They're gonna be better, I think, if their quarterback's healthy, but they're still gonna struggle. They don't have the depth to really stick with the 49ers and the Seahawks, I don't think. Arizona, they're okay, but they're held back by Kyler Murray to an extent. Kyler Murray's a really good quarterback, but his height slows that offense down if you rush him correctly. So I think it's the 49ers in Seattle, and the Witherspoon pick, I really like that, because it's not like they lost somebody so they were replacing them with Witherspoon. Witherspoon's an add to their depth in that secondary, which is already kind of on the come up. So I really like that one. And then the wide receiver out of Ohio State, I get what you're saying there, because he wasn't productive last year because of injuries, but he was really good the year before. And I think you throw him in with what they already have, and now they have a 3rd really good wide receiver. I think that's the thing for me, is that now they have 3 good receivers, and they'll be able to kind of spread the 49ers out along with all that running that they're able to do.
Should the Niners take other teams' drafts into consideration when making their own picks? Should they? And the only teams I would think of would be maybe Seattle, maybe the Rams, maybe the Eagles, because the Eagles are a clear contender, possibly Kansas City. Should they draft with those teams' strengths in mind, trying to match up, or do you say, you know what, no, build your own deal, don't worry about what other teams have, and let the cards fall where they may? Would you take other teams' rosters into consideration when you're putting together your own draft? Should they?
I think you have to. I think you have to look at especially your division teams, because you're playing them twice a season. especially if they're tight with you, like the Seahawks are, for example, or even the Eagles to an extent, where the Eagles are your prime team to fight against this year. I think it's the 49ers and the Eagles. So you have to look at what they're doing a little bit in terms of your roster. But I think some of that also comes through free agency. When you're doing draft, it's a little bit more long term. When you're doing free agency, it's who can I get today that's going to fill this role to stop this player. I think that's what you do more of in free agency. I think in draft, it's a little bit more long term vision for your roster, especially when you have a group like the 49ers do, where they're pretty much already set with their starting group.
I kind of believe that you really should look at just, not every team in the league or anything, but just, as far as who you're matching up with. One of the things that I don't know if people realize this, but these NFL coaches spend a lot of time in the off season trying to figure out their divisional opponents. There's a reason that teams' divisional games look different than non-divisional games, because there's so many man hours that go into preparation in the divisional games. And it's just I think you got to take it into account. If a team's got Lawrence Taylor, you better have an offensive tackle. If a team's got Jerry Rice, you better have a corner who can match him up, or it's gonna be a long day at the office. That being said, the Eagles, had an interesting draft last night. They went with Jalen Carter with the 9th pick overall. They traded up to get him. Carter was a lot of people's idea, was going to go number 1 to the Bears when the mock drafts first came out and in the the very beginning of the draft season. But Carter's kind of a little bit of a malcontent. He's got problems. He's had maturity issues. Didn't stay in shape. Didn't get himself in shape. Has problems off the field, baggage. I in a way, I was kind of like, I was happy when the Eagles took him, because he's got issues and they go beyond. If you're getting just this, Jalen Carter, and he's going to work hard, and you're going to get him going, and he's going to fulfill his potential, then I don't like that, because Jalen Carter has a ton of potential. But to me, his character issues, his lack of devotion to his craft, I don't think those things are solved just because suddenly he's a Philadelphia Eagle. Suddenly Nick Sirianni and Howie Roseman bring him into the fold, and suddenly this guy's like the hardest working guy of all time. I think you kind of are who you are. And then they took Nolan Smith at the end of the first round with pick number 30, and Smith ran 4.38 and is a great pass rusher. I guess overall, though, even though I think Carter may have some question marks, and Smith wasn't the most productive guy considering his measurables, they still added to their D line. So does that make, the Niners offensive line is one of their needs. Does the Eagles draft make the offensive line a primary need today?
I think offensive line was already a need for the 49ers, at least at tackle, right? They're returning 4 of their 5 starters from last season. So that's the first piece of this. But the right tackle, that's where they're having some changeover. And so I can see the 49ers going here, making a move to try to solidify that spot. I know they're high on Colton McKivitz, but you bring in somebody for maybe the longer range. So I could see right tackle definitely being a spot. Wanya Morris out of Oklahoma makes a lot of sense for the 49ers. He should be around there when the 49ers pick, if they sit, with what they have right now. So I can definitely see that being a position that the 49ers try to upgrade. I look at the Carter pick and even the Smith pick to a certain extent as, I don't think the Eagles made themselves better than they were a year ago. They're worse a year ago along the offensive line than they were last season. They're making the same mistake the 49ers made in 2020, right?
Trying to fill a need immediately. Like, hey, they lost Javon Hargrave. We got to get Jalen Carter. As we're losing DeForest Buckner. Kinlaw, just come on. Is that what you're talking about?
In a way, yeah. In a way, in that they had a really productive player that they let go because he was going to be too expensive, and so they're replacing him with a guy out of the SEC who, there were a lot of questions regarding Javon Kinlaw when the 49ers drafted him. More of it was physical in terms of his knees and those types of things. There were some questions there about his ability to stay down and those as well. Carter has all these question marks, and you look at Carter, you look at Kinlaw. 2 guys that were taken, Kinlaw 14, Carter at 9. And when you look at what they did in college, Javon Kinlaw was a more productive college player than Jalen Carter. And so I see a lot of questioning of how are the 49ers going to deal with this front. I think right now the 49ers are better off facing the Eagles front that as it stands now than it would have been if there had been no changes to the Eagles and they had gone ahead and kept Javon Hargrave. So, I look at this, maybe over the long run, Carter is going to be good and Smith will be helpful. But I think for the immediate, I think the 49ers are ahead of them right now in that.
First super chat goes to, Carl? Carl says, where are you taking Ryan for that steak dinner? Carl, pump the brakes on that. The hay's not in the barn. We'll probably go to Pig in a Pickle if I'm paying, but we'll let Ryan choose on that. But don't. There's an awful lot of people who are awfully excited about that, and we're not there yet. So we'll hit that in just a second. What did you think, though, before we get to the Niners in round 2 and round 3 and looking ahead and Trey Lance and Ayuk and all the speculation? What did you think if I said to you best pick of round 1, worst pick of round 1? What jumps out to you? What did you think? Would you say Seattle getting Witherspoon's the best pick of the round, or does that just stand out to you because they're Seattle? What did you have as the best pick in the first round? What did you have as the worst pick?
I really like the Seattle pick because, like I said before, that was an addition. It wasn't filling, because they lost somebody, so they needed to fill that out. They actually just made a nice addition there. So I really like the Witherspoon pick. The pick from the Lions, the running back there, that was I think maybe the biggest head scratcher, just because you can get running backs in a lot of different ways. They didn't necessarily need to trade up to get that, trade to get that guy or do any of the moves that they didn't get him that high. I think they could have got a nice running back a little bit further down. So I would say the running back to the Lions would be the worst. And then put that right in there with the linebacker as well. I think the Lions had an interesting first round of the draft. Let's just put it that way. And
they reached. They really reached. I mean, Jack Campbell, I watch a lot of Iowa football. I'm kind of a gambling addict. No, I shouldn't say that. But I've bet on them a lot, and I've really liked betting on them. They score no points, but their defense allowed no points. I mean, it was like you could always go with the under. Jack Campbell had great measurables if you looked at the workout, the workout season here in the lead up to the draft, and God knows he was a productive linebacker for Iowa. But still, I thought that was a round and a half, probably too early. Definitely at least one round too early. I kind of like Jahmyr Gibbs. I think he's a home run hitter. I think he's, excellent receiver, big play guy. But, man, I mean, if you look at the way the draft, every mock that I've done, when I get to the 6th round, 7th round, there's good running backs. When I get after the draft, there's good running backs that I'd like to sign. And I like Jahmyr Gibbs a lot more than those guys. He's special. But when you can get good running backs in the 6th round, 7th round, and after the draft, why are you? To me, I think I'm not a believer. I guess my belief is this, Jack. If the Niners were even more loaded than they are, or if the Eagles were more loaded than they are, or the Chiefs are more loaded than they currently are, and all they needed was one awesome back, and there was a great back, then do it. Then go for it. Then going for the running back in the first round makes sense. But everybody else, I think it's a bad game plan. If you're not a running back away from a Super Bowl, then don't draft a running back in the first round. So I agree with you on that. The Falcons took Bijan Robinson, and Bijan Robinson's going to have a 1,200-yard season. He might be the offensive rookie of the year, but I think they're a good example. It's like, really, by the time you're ready to be a Super Bowl contender, which should be at least 2-3 years from now, is Bijan Robinson gonna be this awesome player at that point? I don't know. I'm sure Desmond Ridder is happy that they have Bijan Robinson going into the season because now they'll have even a stronger run game. And I know Arthur Smith wants to run it, but Bijan Robinson at 8, when you can get running backs later, I don't love that. The two picks, the one pick I thought was just an incredible pick was Kalijah Cansey at 19. I mean, Kalijah Cansey is an awesome player. He was the ACC Defensive Player of the Year. He can play end, he can play tackle, he can rush the passer. He's great against the run. I mean, Kalijah Cansey's just a monster, and he can play. He can play in a bunch of different spots on the D line. He could be a three technique. He can play over the nose. He can literally play defensive end. I think he could even play edge. He's so fast. So I love that for Tampa. And then, conversely, I think every D lineman on your line, I think we're in 2023 now, they all got to be pass rushers. So for Dallas to take Mozzie Smith, who's a freak of nature and great athlete, but you're talking about a two-down nose guard who doesn't really hold up against combo blocks, doesn't have a lot of production in the backfield as far as tackles for losses or sacks, isn't really a sack the quarterback kind of a guy. I know Dallas needed to stop the run, and they got plenty of edge rushers and guys who can turn you over in the secondary. But, man, you can get Keandre Coburn 4 rounds after that, I think, and he's very similar. And you had Michael Mayer staring you on the board. You lost Dalton Schultz to the Texans. I thought the Cowboys should have gone tight end there or something else instead of a two-down run stuffer who doesn't necessarily stand up against combo blocks and is more of a projection based on measurables and workouts. So I thought Mozzie Smith for Dallas was a real reach.
Well, you speak of projections based off of measurables and those types of things. Look at what the Colts did at number 4 with the quarterback that they took, right? They when that pick was going down, I was listening to the ESPN radio guys, and they were saying, Shane Steichen just got his new Jalen Hurts, and I'm thinking to myself, hey, hold on a second. Jalen Hurts, there's a lot more experience out of Jalen Hurts in college. I think he threw the ball around 1,100 times, ran it 500 times or something like that. I don't remember exactly the numbers were right off the top of my head. And you compare that over to what the guy that they picked up did, and Richardson's a guy who has 390 pass attempts, 140 rushes. It's the Trey Lance thing all over again. It's a guy who has extremely high upside, has issues when it comes time to put the ball on target, in fact, consistently. It's the same kind of stuff. And, we'll see what happens. He's probably going to get more playing time out there. That isn't a team that's necessarily expecting to win right away. So I'm really interested to see how that all plays out for them, because I get it. The guy is, I keep seeing people say he's a generational talent. Well, I don't think you're a generational talent unless you actually are a very good player that makes plays when you get to the NFL. You can have all the talent in the world, but then still not be good. So we'll see what happens with Richardson. I'm interested in that one. Two teams I thought that did really well, other than what we already said, was I like what the Tennessee Titans did. I like the fact that they did not jump at a quarterback and they went ahead and they took Skoronski. I think with what they do and their running game and the way that they try to build that up, makes a ton of sense for them to go with Skoronski. I really like that pick for Tennessee.
Yeah, I do too. Very safe pick. I also like the fact that, offensive linemen, he's hanging out with a pizza place in his hometown and bypass going to New York or going to Kansas City for the draft. And, that's what I want from my offensive lineman. I don't want some guy who's going to put on a suit and go to Kansas City. I want a guy who's hanging out with his buddies at a pizza place in his hometown. And Skoronski is a terrific player. I mean, I watched him. I think that guy's going to play in the NFL for a decade.
Yeah, I think so. And then the other one that I like is what Jacksonville did. They went back a couple of places and picked up Anton Harrison, the offensive lineman at Oklahoma, who I really like that. I thought in my final mock draft, if I was the 49ers, if I was sitting there and I had an option with what I was going to do, I think the 49ers should have traded Brandon Ayuk to Jacksonville for pick 24 and taken Anton Harrison, because they have aging guys in a couple of spots, one of them at left tackle. This is a guy who come in, possibly play right tackle for you for a year or two. And then once Trent Williams decides that he's going to go, you have somebody to slide right into that spot. And I think it would have been a great move for the 49ers there. And, Ayuk's a really nice player, but he's really the 4th best receiver on the 49ers at this point.
Gerardo Sanchez says, Saludos, Krueger, great tandem with Jack Hammer. Who's going to be the first pick for the Niners tonight? What do you think the Niners mindset ought to be as the clock is ticking down in the second and third round? Should they trade up for one great player? Could you trade up for one player? I mean, what would parlaying their 3 end of third round picks? What's the highest they could get up? I haven't even done the calculations on that. They go 99, 101, 102. Let's just say they loved Michael Mayer, because I love Michael Mayer. I think Michael Mayer is a great tight end. I think he's going to be a superstar. If they shared my belief and said, we got to get Michael Mayer, we're going to trade our 3 number 3s, how high do you think they can get up?
I think with all 3 of their 3s, they can probably get up into the back end of round 2. The other thing to think about here is they may not have to give up all 3 of those to move up, because right now, as it stands, they have, I believe they have their own 3rd next year, and then they're going to get 2 comp picks. So they're going to have 3 third-round picks next year. So you already know you're going to get at least 1, most likely 2 comp picks. Use your own 3rd to get yourself up. If you feel like there's somebody that's really there, you can use that pick to move up. And I think, maybe you do that and you keep one of those 3rd-round picks that you already have there, because I don't think you want to go all the way from use all 3 of them for one guy and really kind of just shoot your whole thing at one shot. I think you want to try to move up as much as you can, but keep one more spot. I think the Flyers want to come up today with at least 2 nice players.
We got this one from Uncle Salt. He said, glad there are no more blatant trade rumors remaining for the 49ers going into today. Let Lynch, Peters, and Shanny rebuild our depth. I think there's an awful lot of people that are putting the cart before the horse here. Let me hit a couple of these. Sacktown Izzy. Looks like Krueg was wrong about Lance being traded. Guys, it's 2:27, 2 hours before round 2 is going to start. I don't think he was going to be traded last night. I think if he's going to be traded, it's going to be today or tomorrow. And somebody's asking, Gregus says, Larry has moved the goalposts until the draft is over, and then it will be the deadline before he'll admit defeat. I mean, this is all I said. All I said was, I'm reading the tea leaves, and I think the tea leaves indicate he's going to be traded. I actually pointed to something as to why he's going to be traded. Mm-hmm. Everybody else who says he's not going to be traded really aren't pointing to anything other than, they can't trade him. They just can't. I haven't heard anybody explain to me what the long-range plan is. Jed has said Brock's the guy. Kyle has said Brock's the guy. Lynch has said multiple times Brock's the guy. Those are the people that run the team. So it's not about me. It's not about Ryan Hensley. It's not about a wager. It's about the people who run the team say that a quarterback is their guy, and it ain't Trey Lance. To me, the most revealing part of the Lynch interview the other day was when he was asked about Lamar Jackson, and he's like, hey, man, we're not going for Lamar, basically. We like Brock. He didn't say we like our guys. He didn't say I like Brock and we like Trey. He said we like Brock. So my whole point was this, and I've never moved off of it, not once, not one iota. Last offseason was about Trey. Let's set it up for Trey. Let's make everything perfect for Trey. Trey. This year, it's no longer about that. It's now about Brock. Let's set it up for Brock. And how is having Trey Lance looking over his shoulder in Brock's best interest? I don't think it is. I don't think they think it is. Also, there's all these people that want to have this knockdown, drag-out, everyday, camp battle between Trey and Darnold, and then maybe between Darnold or Trey and Brock. I don't think that's what the 49ers want. I think the 49ers want to recommit to Brock Purdy. That's my assessment of it. So I do think he's going to be traded. And, yeah, if there's people in here, Sacktown Izzy, looks like Krueg was wrong. Looks like Sacktown Izzy is putting the hay in the barn before the thing's over. I fully expect – you got to remember this. Let's look at this draft. You could make an argument, depending on how teams feel about Trey, about Hendon Hooker, or about Will Levis, that Trey Lance, every team that is thinking quarterback, and we'll talk about who that could be, is considering Trey Lance at this point. Do I want Jake Haener, or do we want to trade for Trey Lance? Do we want DTR or do we want to trade for Trey Lance? Do we want Will Levis or do we want to trade for Trey Lance? So I actually personally think that Lance is a better prospect than many of the quarterbacks that will go today. And I think the 49ers, if somebody offers a second-round pick, I think they would take it. I think if somebody offers them a third-round pick, they're probably going to take it. Heck, I'm not even convinced if the 49ers were offered, like, let's say Washington, who has no quarterback. Washington has Sam Howell and Jacoby Brissett. If Washington gets to their pick in the third round, they could easily move that for Trey Lance. I actually think that we could get beyond today. We could get into tomorrow, guys, and Washington could say, you know what? We'd like to have Trey Lance. We'll offer you our fourth-round pick and Montez Sweat, who's a free agent at the end of the year. If I'm in the 49ers, I think I would take that. I think I would take Montez Sweat in a fourth-round pick. Not everybody would, but I think I would. And I don't know where the Niners are, and I know none of you do either. Nobody in this chat knows where the Niners are on this. So Ken Martin says, Krug said the 49ers would take a third for Lance. He doesn't think it's over. I absolutely don't think it's over. What do you think, Jack? I mean, where are you on this? On this, where do you think the 49ers are with Trey Lance? Because people expecting them to come out and be like, you know what? We're going to trade him. They were going to give you they were going to give you indications, but they were never going to say that. And so all these people that are like, they never said they were going to trade him. Nobody does. Nobody says that. They said they weren't going to trade Nick Bosa. They said they weren't going to trade Brandon Ayuk. They didn't say they weren't going to trade Trey Lance. So I personally kind of think that since this is now about Brock Purdy and not Trey Lance in their minds, I think they are going to move Trey Lance. I think it's probably going to come today. It wouldn't shock me if it came tomorrow. If the Commanders said, here's Montez Sweat or Chase Young in a fifth-round pick, I think I would take that. And who knows? That means it might not happen in round 2 or round 3 or round 4. It could happen in the 5th round tomorrow. So let's just let this play out for a day. And then at the end of the discussion, really, if he doesn't get... My whole thing was they're going to Brock. I mean, when I said this, when I made the claim that the Niners were going to trade Trey Lance, you guys were all talking... Not you, Jack, but the audience was all talking about Trey's the starter. Trey's going to start. And I said, no. No, you guys are misreading it. Brock's going to start. Trey's most likely going to be dealt. What? People are going crazy.
Huh?
Now, I think most people understand. Brock is the starter. Now people understand that. When I made this claim, this was around the combine, that I thought they were going to commit to Brock as the starter and move Trey. I said it before they even said who they were going with. Since that point, they've kind of all reconfirmed that they believe Brock is their number one guy, and they have not said not one thing to tell us that they would guarantee that Trey Lance is going to be on the field. The other thing that we got Trey Lance saying, hey, man, all I want is a chance to compete. I don't think that you're saying that if you're getting that chance. Like, if I know I've got a show tomorrow, I don't be like, hey, man, I just want to have a show tomorrow. I would say that is if I wasn't going to have a show tomorrow and I wasn't going to be able to do a show tomorrow. They'd be like, you know what? I really would just like to do a show tomorrow. So for him coming out and saying, hey, I just want a chance to compete. I don't know what you guys heard, but what I heard is I want a chance to compete, and I don't think I'm going to get one here because Brock Purdy is their guy, and they've made that decision. So I think that's where that's coming from when Trey goes, hey, man, I just want a chance to compete. I think he said it because he's not going to get it here. Now, the question is, they're not going to hand him to somebody for nothing. They're going to want something in return. And I did go through the league and look at who's out there. And there aren't a lot of spots. I mean, it's Minnesota, it's Tennessee, it's Washington. Those are the primary. You could make an argument for Atlanta, Tampa, maybe New England. But to me, it's Minnesota, Tennessee, Washington. I'd probably even take Minnesota out of it and say it's probably Tennessee or Washington. But let's not put this thing to bed until we see where this goes. And then even after this draft, am I going to be – I'll gladly take Ryan Hensley to lunch if they don't trade him this weekend. Gladly. I'm not anybody who thinks I'm going to back out of this deal doesn't know me at all. I collect my bets, and I pay my bets. But am I more wrong or am I more right if they trade him in May? I still said Brock's the guy. I said it in February before anybody said anything. I said Brock's the guy, and they're moving off of Trey. So now you're going to tell me I'm moving the goalpost? I said in February, Brock's the guy, and they're going to move off of Trey. And now here we are. If it doesn't happen this weekend, I'm wrong. And what happens if they move off of Trey next month? Am I right then? I'm the one who told you in February, Brock's the guy, and they're moving Trey. All right.
Damn it, Larry! I told you a long time ago that how this was going to go down. I told you they were going to trade Trey at some point, or the possibility was there that they were going to trade Trey. No, I think here's the thing: is I don't think you're wrong. I mean, they might not make the move, but what you're saying is right. Is that
they're going to recommit to Brock? Brock's their guy.
They're committed to Brock Purdy. That's the guy they're committed to. And my takeaway Monday was they would trade him if they just were given an offer that wasn't peanuts. Yeah, I agree with you. They're not just going to trade him just to trade him. They need to get something back. And I don't think anybody's giving them anything close to what they're asking for, or what would even move them off of their spot with where they are now. Do I think he's going to get traded? I really don't. I still don't. But I'm not going to be shocked if he does. When Tennessee made the pick last night and went with the offensive tackle, I tweeted out, the Tennessee went offensive tackle at 11. The next question is going to be, does Lance go to Tennessee for 50? And my answer to that is no. They're not going to go that direction. If I'm the Tennessee Titans, I would rather go ahead, and if I can get to 50 and get a quarterback at 50, I'd rather get that guy and develop that guy, because he's going to be a lot cheaper than Trey Lance. He might even be a better player than Trey Lance. I don't quite. It's an interesting thing, because if you're any team looking to get a quarterback right now, it's, do I want to spend the money on Trey Lance? Do I think I can develop him? Or can I get a guy in the draft that I'm going to be able to develop who's going to be as good as he is, and he's going to be cheaper for me for the next 4 years instead of paying $9.3 million this year and $11 million next year? I think that's the biggest hindrance for the 49ers with moving Trey Lance, is the fact that he's so expensive, and he hasn't at this point, it's all potential. Trey Lance is all potential, just like every pick in the draft. And so that's why I think the 49ers are having a hard time moving him. I don't think he goes to Tennessee, although that's an option. I do like what you're saying about the Washington football team, the Commanders. I think he makes a ton of sense there. Maybe as a later round pick. If somebody came to the 49ers and said, we'll give you our 4th round pick and a conditional second next year, I think that's enough to get the deal done.
I mean, it's really eye-opening that nobody, if nobody's making any offers for Trey, doesn't that make you kind of sit there and go, what? Really? I mean, I think the guy's a pretty good prospect. I know there's refinement that's needed. To me, it's just the one thing about the Trey situation is that Lynch said it. He said it at the beginning of the combine. Trey needs to play. And Brock's going to play if he's healthy. So Trey's only playing if he's healthy and beats out Sam Darnold. And yet everybody seems to, from Jordan Palmer to Ian Rappaport and others, people just, you know what? It's going to be Sam Darnold. And to me, Jack, if Trey Lance is allowed to compete with Sam Darnold, I really think Trey Lance beats out Sam Darnold. So I don't understand the people who seem rock solid about, man, Sam Darnold's going to be the week 1 starter. Why? Mm-hmm. Why is he? I mean, Sam Darnold, who's Mr. Turnover, turned it over a ton at SC, has turned it over a ton in the pros. It's just like a no-brainer now that he's going to beat out Trey Lance. To me, those reports indicate that Trey Lance is not going to be here, because I don't think that people would be that cocky if there was actually going to be an open competition. I can't believe people would be on the record as stating that Sam Darnold, who has been a bust of busts, is going to beat out Trey Lance, who was the 3rd pick in the draft, who has incredible talent, but has only played 4 games as a pro. Why are people saying that Sam Darnold's beating him out? I mean, what does that say about Trey? And then what does it say about Trey if nobody in the league wants him?
Especially what Jordan Palmer said, how it was just so matter of fact that that guy's going to be the starter. talking about Sam Darnold that it was just so matter of fact. At some point along the way, they worked together. So I'm pretty sure. I feel like the 49ers told Sam Darnold that he was going to, that's kind of the direction they're going to go. I just think the 49ers are getting stuck here. I think the 49ers want to move Trey Lance. I just don't think the NFL wants Trey Lance or wants to give them as much as they want. It's Jimmy Garoppolo all over again. The 49ers tried all last year to trade Jimmy Garoppolo. They had a number in mind. They couldn't get it. And then they ended up having to hold on to him. And then at the end, losing him for nothing. And I think they're in the same spot with Trey Lance, is that they're holding on to him. There's all this talk about, Lance being the guy because Purdy's not going to be healthy week 1, all this kind of stuff. And it's all coming from people who are Trey Lance supporters who want Trey Lance to play. And I'm sorry, there are a high number of people that do what we do that are pro Trey Lance, very, very, very pro Trey Lance. And anything, there are people that will do complete shows and tell you that Trey Lance is getting screwed, that the 49ers have mistreated Trey Lance. They haven't even given him a shot, which is just wrong. He just hasn't been able to perform to a level to take the job. And so, and when the year that he would have been the starter, he got hurt 5 quarters in. So, it's going to be interesting to watch how this plays out. I do think the 49ers want to move Trey Lance. I just don't think that anybody is knocking on their door saying, hey, we're going to give you a 2nd-round pick this year or a 3rd-round pick this year. I think that's why they're holding on to him. They're not getting what they want. They've only, John Lynch said, the phone's not ringing off the hook, and we're not getting anything that's substantive. And that last part is what I think is the holdup, is that they're not getting anything that gives you the value that you're looking for with that player. Because if they got that value, they would move off of them in a heartbeat, and they're not getting it.
Elias Soto says might hold on to Lance, play him number 2, increase his value. Sure. I mean, at this point, it sounds like his value is not very high. Maybe they hold on to him and he increases his value. I mean, maybe that's their thinking. I just think that this is all. Last year was about what's best for Trey. This year's not about what's best for Trey. This year's about what's best for Brock. And that's kind of and is it best for Brock? I mean, you got to remember this. You got an army of people that are waiting there, and every time Brock throws an incompletion, they're going to be like, Trey should be playing. Trey should be playing. And then that drum beat of Trey should be in there is going to be constant. And I just don't think the 49ers want that. I think they would rather have Brock recommit to Brock and have a clear delineation on who's the 1, who's the 2, who's the 3, and take this entire debate away. So that's my thinking on it. The other thing is, let's not forget. Let's think for a second about John Lynch, who spoke on Monday, and I was there. You were there. We were there. Okay, we saw it. If I don't think John Lynch would have said, "I'm going to trade Trey Lance" at that thing, no matter what.
No.
And even if he had a great deal for Trey Lance, he probably would have, said, well, we'll just see how it goes. Mm-hmm. He's like, guys, it's a lot of smoke. Why was he, downplaying it? Because, if somebody comes to you on the clock and makes you an offer today, tonight, or tomorrow, and you want to make that deal, you make that deal. And then you say, you know what? We expected Trey to be on the roster, but we got a deal we couldn't pass up. So we made the deal. Mm-hmm. If you say, hey, we're going to move him, and you don't move him, now it's like John on Saturday, you failed in your efforts to trade Trey Lance. How do you feel about now that you failed in your efforts? And now there's maybe some damage control with the media, damage control with the fan base. There may even be some damage control with Trey if you said, hey, we're trading him, and then you don't. So I personally think that he handled that the way he had to handle it, which is I don't think Trey Lance is anybody's first choice, but I also don't believe that nobody wants Trey Lance. I think it's different than Jimmy because Jimmy had a big exorbitant price tag. I don't think Trey's price tag is that exorbitant that people on the contract alone would be like, no. I think they could deal with the contract. I think it really just comes down to this is what you say when you don't know if you're going to get offers. I'm sure I bet you John Lynch has 2 or 3 teams that have said, hey, we're interested in Trey, but only if this happens. This quarterback's not there. We haven't drafted this. The player that we think is going to be there in the 3rd or 4th round isn't. Then we'll trade you this and this for Trey Lance, and maybe even the return's palatable to Lynch and Shanahan. But at the same time, since it's kind of contingent, aren't you going to downplay that? You should. Any smart executive would. He may have 2 or 3 contingent offers. The other thing I think is something to watch for on the Lance thing today or tomorrow is I think the 49ers don't want to. I think Trey's value is speculative at this point, right? It's I may view him high, you may view him low, somebody may view him as a 3rd round value, other people may view him as a 6th round value. But if you move a player and a conditional pick, I could easily see them, like if we get to like Washington, for example. Let's talk about Washington. Washington today picks 47th in round 2. They picked 97th overall, a couple picks in front of the 49ers towards the end of the 3rd round. And then they pick 118 tomorrow in the 4th round and 150 in the 5th round. Let's say Washington came to you and said, we want Trey Lance, but we have him more of as a 5th round value or a 4th round value. And they're like, oh, no, we're not moving him for a 4th round pick. But you're the 49ers. And you want to move them because you feel like you want to recommit to Brock and maybe go with have a more clearly. You don't want to have this battle royale quarterback competition that everybody weighs in on. You want to have a very clear-cut quarterback competition with Brock as your clear 1, Darnold as your clear 2, maybe Dorian Thompson-Robinson as your clear 3. Let's say if Washington says, you know what, we really don't want to throw a day 2 pick. We're more like day 3, John. But guess what? We're up against the cap. Every D end on our roster is a free agent. How about this? How about Montez Sweat in our 5th, and for Trey Lance and a conditional pick in next year's draft that protects you if Trey comes here and kicks ass, or protects us if Trey comes here and is terrible and can't get on the field. So what do we get? Well, you get a 5th round pick today. You're getting Montez Sweat, who's a free agent, by the way, at the end of the year. I think if you're the 49ers, that might be attractive. Why? Because you can sell to your fans, hey, man, we're in it to win the Super Bowl this year. We're adding Montez Sweat opposite Nick Bosa to a line that has Javon Hargrave and Eric Armstead. And we got a conditional pick in next year's draft, and we got a day 3 pick this year. But it's really about the Super Bowl and trying to win it this year. And you get a starting caliber defensive end. Granted, only 1 year on the deal, and he's a free agent at the end of the year. But I could see something like that. Why? Because Montez Sweat has value, and his value is probably up here. But the fact of the matter is, since he's a free agent at the end of the year, and Chase Thomas could be in this, or Chase Young could be in the same discussion. It could be either one of those guys. But their value as players is up here. Maybe Chase Young's a little lower because of the injury. But their value, when you factor in their contract and their free agent status, goes from up here to down here because you're only getting them for 1 year. So if you're the 49ers and you want to strike a deal that's palatable to your fans but still fair to the other team, if they have Trey ranked as a 5th round or a 4th round pick, maybe you could work some kind of deal where you throw a conditional pick in next year's draft and you get a Montez Sweat, and it looks like, wow, they got a really great player. But when you look at the fine print, you realize, oh, wait a second. They only got that really great player for 1 year before he potentially could walk in free agency, and they got a day 2 pick and a conditional something. I think something like that, where when you first hear the trade, you're like, wow, that's a good haul. But then when you look at it closer, you're like, wait a second. Montez could easily walk at the end of the year, and you got a 5th and a 6th for Trey Lance. I think it could be something like that. So the people who are going to be like celebrating tonight at the end of round 3 going, they're not moving him, I would just say wait throughout the entire weekend, because all the verbal indications are that they are moving him. Yeah. I didn't just invent this. John Lynch was the one who went to the combine and said, hey, Trey's got to play, and that's the challenge because we're ready to win now. And basically what he was saying is, hey, we're going with Brock Purdy. Trey needs to be on the field to develop, and he's not going to be on the field here if Brock is healthy. That, to me, sounded like a trade, and that's why I read it as such. We'll see. We'll see how. I'm not backing out. I said it in February. I restated it in March. I've restated it so many times that people are now hating on me for stating it. I still believe it. I believe he gets moved. I believe it's either today or tomorrow. there's a possibility it won't happen, and if so, I'll gladly take Ryan to lunch. But I still think at the end of the day, my general message was on point, which is I'm reading the tea leaves, and my tea leaves say that Brock is the guy in their eyes, and that Trey is no longer the guy, and that they'll likely move off of Trey. And I think that's whether it happens today, tomorrow, or if it happens in a month. If that happens, I still kind of say that I still got to. I'm not going to take it as a loss. When I said in February, when everybody else was saying Trey's going to start, I said no, Trey's going to be dealt, and Brock's going to start. I still think I'm pretty close to being right.
Yeah, I like what you're saying. If you could, I think what you're talking about with a fourth round or fifth round pick, and you get a player in return. I think that, especially with the way the 49er fans view, the fan base views the defensive end position, I think they would be positive about a move like that. I think Washington makes a ton of sense, even if you take that out. I think you look at where their picks are, 97, I believe it is in round 3, 118 in that ballpark. There's some really good players that the 49ers have met with that are going to be sitting around there. So, at 90, let's say they get there and 97, that's prime spot for Jaden Reed, who's a receiver that they really like. I think the 49ers should get. I think Brandon Ayuk will be here in 2023. I don't think he'll be here in 2024. And I think that's why you see them reaching out and they're looking at these guys like Reed, like Wicks, that'll be going tomorrow. So if you can trade Lance, I think it all depends on, I really think the other part of it depends on what they can get back for next year. If they can get a nice conditional pick next year, like you said, they've got to protect themselves. They got to make themselves look good, right? So they either get a player back that's really good, or they get a pick next year that can be really high if Lance balls out. I think those moves make sense. In order to do that, they really have to believe that Brock Purdy is going to be there week 1, and it'll be interesting to see how it plays out.
All right, I'm going to ask you a question that I asked Grant yesterday. Let me first read Spider Rico's super chat. He says, if teams take 25-year-old Hendon Hooker with a torn ACL and about to be 24 years old, Levis, instead of 22-year-old dual-threat Lance, says a lot about how the league views him. By the way, did you see that Levis puts mayonnaise in his coffee?
That's disgusting.
That's got to be the most disgusting thing I've ever heard.
And
I almost wouldn't draft a guy based on that alone. Is that enough to not draft a guy finding out that he puts gobs and gobs of mayonnaise in his coffee?
Hey,
that's one of the most vile things I think I've ever heard.
Hey, it's almost as bad as those guys that like myself who say, I make a nice peanut butter and mayonnaise, or not a peanut butter, but a mayonnaise and banana sandwich. Those are pretty good too. Try them.
Let me ask you this: the question before I get to Rafe here, or Rafe Campbell. I asked Grant the question yesterday when we did a live stream. I said, "Is the fact that the Niners uncovered a true gem in Brock Purdy as Mr. Irrelevant? Does that make if by chance they swung and missed on Lance, and if nobody wants him and they still want to move him, man, I mean, you got to say that we're getting close to bust territory, even though he's only played 4 games. I personally don't think he's a bust. I just think it's going to take him a long time, and it's just a matter of who has time to give him the field time to develop, who has the patience. But is that a wash? Is it a wash that they found Purdy in the 7th round if they bust, if Lance is a true bust and is no longer in the league and can't play at all? Is that a wash, or does Lynch and Shanahan deserve criticism despite the fact that they found Purdy in round 7?
I think there's a couple of different ways that you can answer that, because I think personally that yes, they screwed up the pick with Lance. If this plays out, yeah, you screwed up the pick with Lance, but you found your quarterback of the future anyway. Doesn't matter where you got him, you got him. I think that there's a large portion of the 49ers fan base that will rip them for it because they don't believe that Brock Purdy's the guy. So there's a big portion of the fan base, even today, that will tell you the 49ers are better off with Trey Lance than they are with Brock Purdy. Even though what we've seen happen on the field, they will tell you that Trey Lance is better than Brock Purdy for the 49ers for their long run. They have a better chance of winning a Super Bowl with Trey Lance over Brock Purdy. So I think there is a good portion of the fan base that would still be upset about that, even if that played out, unless Purdy wins the Super Bowl. Anything other than the Super Bowl, and it's going to be looked at as a negative by I'd say a good percentage of the base.
if Trey Lance and Brock Purdy, if their career arcs were flip flopped, and instead Brock had been hurt and played 4 games, and Trey had led the Niners to an undefeated run in the regular season, 2 playoff wins before getting hurt against Philadelphia and knocked out. Would people be yelling that Brock Purdy deserves a shot the way they're yelling that Trey deserves a shot?
No, 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 they wouldn't. I mean, the hard part about that though is part of it is because Lance has been the golden child for a certain group since the drafts.
Based on the investment?
Based on, well, not even, there were some very interesting things that went on when you get into the whole draft of the 2021 draft regarding the quarterbacks. It's not even worth really getting into. What I'll say is their Trey Lance is the guy because of the potential. It's very similar to the Richardson thing in that you have a guy who has a big arm who can run like crazy, and he's got all of the intangibles, the potential, right? The potential jumps off the charts at you. But then you get them on the field, and then it's a little hit and miss, and it's good. There's some good stuff, and there's some bad stuff. And so I think if Brock Purdy was playing that way, then I would say people would feel bad, would not like him. It's just a whole thing. I think Lance was the guy. He hasn't panned out, and because he hasn't panned out, and there's people that have put so much of their beliefs into him. There's so much invested in him from a group of fans that if he doesn't succeed, it's not going to be the 49ers. It's not going to be Lance's fault. It's going to be the team's fault. Does that make sense?
That makes no sense, but I do understand. There are already people that are blaming the 49ers for Trey being hurt.
Just look at Twitter and look at YouTube and the videos that people put out about how the 49ers have treated Trey Lance incorrectly. The 49ers have not given Trey Lance a chance. It's the 49ers' responsibility. It's the 49ers' fault that Trey Lance is where he is today. There's a lot of people who say that, and it's wild. And
it is wild if nobody's willing to trade for him in the league, because that kind of flies right in the face of that whole belief.
They gave him a chance in year 1, right? They did, and I know that Kyle Shanahan said that there wasn't going to be a quarterback competition. That wasn't the case. There was a quarterback competition. He said it afterwards, and they said it as that off-season, training camp went through. They said it as that preseason went through. There was a competition that was going on between Trey Lance and Jimmy Garoppolo. If Trey Lance had continued to play and elevate his play as he did, because when Trey Lance in that 2021 preseason, 2021 training camp, when that thing started, he was awesome. He was making throws all over the field. He was exciting. There was a lot of people who thought that he was going to be pushing Jimmy Garoppolo. The general manager said as much. There's a reason why, because he was playing so good, they started letting him work with the ones. There's a reason that he started playing in the games with the ones. But the problem was that once they started doing that, his level of play didn't consistently keep rolling up. It kind of flattened out. And so that's why they went with Garoppolo. And then, they had an opportunity to play him in the game against Arizona. And it wasn't his fault that they lost the game. It was a little inconsistent on his part. The game plan was funky from what Kyle Shanahan did, and it just didn't work out. And so they went back to Garoppolo. And the weirdest thing of the whole thing in 2021 is, why did they go back to Jimmy Garoppolo in Week 18 after Trey Lance played so well in Week 17, especially a guy who was already injured, right? If they really truly believe that Trey Lance was their best bet, why did they not stick with him going into Week 18 when Jimmy Garoppolo had a hurt thumb? Why did they keep rolling out Trey Lance in the playoffs, or Jimmy Garoppolo in the playoffs, when Jimmy Garoppolo had a hurt thumb and a shoulder that was hanging on by a thread? But they never even gave it a shot as far as putting Trey Lance on the field that season. I mean, I kind of understand it from a football perspective, but I'm just getting at the whole thing. They gave him the keys of the cart last year. Everybody that was at training camp last year, head coach included, said that it was up and down. It was rocky. And it transitioned into the games. I know that he didn't have George Kittle. I know that he didn't have Christian McCaffrey. So there's your full context. I know he played in the rain. he was still whatever, and he might have gotten better as the season went on. But my biggest thing, and I've written it in the past, I wrote it back in after the week 1 loss. There are people who think they know what Trey Lance is going to be, and so based on what their belief was, they have put that on him. And there are people who are, and I think that is why when you look at 49ers stuff, and you have so many people that are so hard on Trey Lance, and you have some people that are, I think some of the people that are really hard on Trey Lance, part of it is because you had people who said that this was the guy, right? This is the guy. He's going to do everything, and he hasn't done it yet. And so everybody's like, hey, you told us this guy was going to be great. He hasn't done it yet. When's he going to show up? And I think that's a part of the issue outside of this.
What concerns me is about, first of all, there's two kinds of people. There's the people that get paid money for their opinion, and then there's people who just talk. And people like, media people and fans and content creators, we just talk. But then there are people who actually have skills and who are paid money for their opinions. And what's alarming to me is that the people that I know who get paid for their opinions don't like Trey Lance. And Mike Martz, in an interview that he did on the radio last year, was like, I don't know what the guy does well. He doesn't run well. Looks like he runs like a inside linebacker, and he doesn't throw real well. I really don't know what he does well. That was Mike Martz. People were like, Mike Martz is a hater. Mike Martz is a hater. That was Mike Martz, and he said it very clinically too. It wasn't like, I don't know Trey Lance. I don't know anything about him, but he just is like, he's not a runner, and he's not a thrower, and he's not that accurate. Michael Lombardi is really outspoken 5, 6, 7 different times, asked about Trey Lance, kind of being like, they went with Trey Lance, but I don't know why. I don't know what he does. I did an interview with Randy Mueller, whose brother Rick and I scouted together in the Canadian League. Rick is now the scouting coordinator for recruiting coordinator, I should say, for Coastal Carolina. And Randy is retired, does a podcast, and he's no longer a GM, but he was GM of the Dolphins and the Saints. And I said, Randy, where would you have had Trey Lance in the draft the year he came out? And Jack, you know what he said? I wouldn't have had him on my board at all. I said, Randy, come on. He went third in the draft. You wouldn't have had him on your board at all? He said, Krueg, there wasn't enough college tape of him as a player for me to put him on my board at all. I would have just drawn a line through him and gone on to the next guy and let somebody else draft him. I couldn't even try to tell you where he would rank. This is a guy who got paid money. He was a general manager in the league. He's got no vested interest. He doesn't care. He doesn't know Trey. He doesn't know Shanahan. He doesn't care about any of them. He's just telling me the truth. He would not have had Trey on his board, not in round 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's amazing. Michael Lombardi, incredibly negative. Mike Martz, incredibly negative. I personally think the kid's going to get there, but there's a distance between this, and I don't think the 49ers are willing to put in the investment. And that's why this whole debate of will he be traded, there's no doubt in my mind he will be traded. Will it happen today? I don't know. Will it happen tomorrow? I don't know. There's no doubt in my mind he will be traded. Why? Because the Niners have stated they're going with Brock Purdy, and they're not willing to take the lumps that it's going to take to play Trey and develop him. They're not. They're not going to do it. They're not going to give him. If you said how much time does he need? I would say he needs at least 10 to 15 games of, let's not worry about what it looks like. Let's not worry about how many wins. Let's not worry about let's just worry about improving. He needs 15 games to play to kind of figure it out as far as where he fits in, what he can do, what he can't do, rapport with receivers, iron out all the bugs. And they're not giving him that. And I said this a year ago, that I cannot envision the 49ers giving him the kind of long ramp up that he's going to typically need, what I think he needs, to be successful. So if you're not going to put him on the field, and Lynch said it, he literally said it, and everybody's in denial. He said it. He started off the combine by saying, Trey's got to play, man. Trey's got to play. And that's the problem, because we got a team that's ready to go. The implication was clear. It's like he can't play here. He needs to play, and he can't play here. And that's the challenge.
Yeah.
And that's where we're at. And that's why I said what I said. So we'll see where it goes. It's not about me. It's not about me. It's not about Ryan. It's about the Niners and Trey and their investment and what they've said. But I can point to 10 things they have said or done that say that they're either committed to Brock or not interested in devoting time to Trey. And nobody can point to anything for why he's staying other than they want him to stay.
Yeah, he said also there was I think it was during the combine where he said he needs to play and hopefully we'll see if we can get him that here. It was they're in a win now mode. They're not in that we're going to develop a quarterback for half the season and then
his timeline is not taking. Sorry to interrupt, but his timeline's not taking precedent over theirs. No. Their timeline takes precedent over his.
And the other thing too, when you go back to the what you mentioned earlier about the scouts and there wasn't enough film, there really wasn't. And the biggest question with Trey Lance, when you look at his film, you can see the ball, you can see the nice throws, you can see the run, you can see all that stuff. What you don't see from Trey Lance on any of his college film, how does he handle it when he has to come back in the fourth quarter? How does he handle it if the game's tight at the end and he needs to make a play to win the game? How does he handle it if the game's tight and he needs to hold on to the ball so that they win? There's not that, because in most games he's not even playing at the end of the game. Most of those games when he's at North Dakota State, by midway through the fourth quarter, he's on the bench drinking Kool-Aid, waving at the fans because he's not. That's what happened. But I mean, he's out of the game. He's not in it. And so that's why, like against Chicago, when they got behind in the fourth quarter, the first thing that I said, I tweeted was, this is a situation that he's never been in. How is he going to handle it? He threw an interception, and the game was over with because the Bears scored a touchdown right away. That was before it got the downpour where all of a sudden you couldn't see the field. I know people think that game was played in a downpour where it was just a complete, absolute mess the whole time. Was it wet? Absolutely. Was it bad at times? Absolutely. But it was the fourth quarter from about 10 minutes on. That's when it was outrageous. Up until that point, it was fine. And you can go through that game and I can show you Trey Lance making great throws in the rain. I can show you Trey Lance making bad throws in the rain. Here, and I can also show you that the guy that won that game, Justin Fields, was the best quarterback on the field that day because the 49ers were worried about what he did. The 49ers, and that's why you had the personal foul penalties. The other team wasn't worried about Trey Lance. They were worried about everything other than Trey Lance because Trey Lance doesn't threaten you with his legs, even though he's supposed to be a running quarterback. He's a running quarterback. He's not a quarterback that threatens you, that you're really worried about scrambling all over the field.
Rafe Campbell says, when they get Dorian Thompson-Robinson in the third round, then you'll know they'll trade Trey Lance after the draft. 2 reasons: money and no quarterback will survive the cutdown. I mean, that's the other one, too. There's a lot of people out there that are so uninformed that they're like, you know what? They're not going to trade Trey, and they are going to draft Dorian Thompson-Robinson. It's like, what? Dude. I mean, are you not grasping the way football works? Nobody goes with 4 quarterbacks. I said this in a video 3-4 weeks ago. You're not getting Dorian Thompson-Robinson, Brock Purdy, Sam Darnold, and Trey Lance. There's no 4 quarterback roster in the NFL. I don't think anybody's kept 4. And I don't anticipate the Niners, who have a ton of running backs and a lot of receivers and a lot of D linemen, and they're going to have a bunch of young DBs. They're not going to have a roster spot for a 4th quarterback, so they're not keeping a 4th quarterback. So if they draft one, and they're not sneaking any draft pick, Jake Haener, DTR, Max Duggan, you fill in the name of whatever quarterback you like, none of them will slip through waivers at the trade deadline or at the cutdown deadline. So what, are you going to draft a guy in April and cut him in August? No, you're not doing that. Which was also there were people that were suggesting they were going to do that with Brock Purdy last summer. They're going to cut Brock and they're going to why are they going to cut Brock? Well, because Sudfeld's guaranteed a 3 million. Stupid. Twisted Clown says,
you just call me stupid, Larry.
Did you?
Come on, man.
Did you say that?
I did say that, but
Oh, I'm sorry.
no, I'm not worried about it. That's one of the things that I don't mind I don't mind if I did say something stupid if you told me I was stupid on here. But yeah, I mean that was the thought process, and it would have been interesting to see if they could have snuck Purdy through, but Purdy just balled out so well.
Yeah,
He
once you play
doesn't
well in the
probably,
preseason, you're
that's
nobody's gonna. It's quarterback, right? They're not gonna let you keep nobody's gonna let a decent quarterback who had a good college career and then look good in the preseason slip through waivers. No.
yeah. I would also agree with the previous super chat that you had up there about with Dorian Thompson Robinson. If they do take him, that's a sign that you're going to see a trade come down, because there's no way that Thompson Robinson gets picked and then they're able to move him onto the training onto the practice squad, because you've got to waive him to get him there. That's not going to happen. Maybe if you get a guy like Max Duggan at the end of the draft or something like that, then maybe. But beyond that, I think that was a good call by that commenter.
A very interesting situation for sure. There may not be a market for Trey at all, and yet the 49ers, even the other day, they easily could have said, hey, you know what? I mean, John easily. The thing that I was waiting for John to say is, hey, guys, you know what? We looked around the league, and, we didn't see the kinds of offers that we thought we would see. So we're just going to go forward with Trey and this and that. But he kind of said it, but didn't say it. He wouldn't commit to it, but he kind of suggested that was the case. But he wouldn't commit to it. Why? Because I think they're still looking to move him. And if they weren't looking to move him, he could have just said, hey, guys, we didn't like the offers that we saw, and even the nature of the offers that we saw. So we're not going to trade him. We've changed our tune, and he's going to be here. But he didn't say that. He kind of stopped short of that. Twisted Clown says, what if the Rams trade for Trey? I'll be sick. I mean, I don't know that would maybe the price for the Rams to acquire Trey would be more expensive than the price for other teams. What do you think of the other quarterbacks in the draft, Jack? Is there a quarterback in this draft? Because here's the thing: if I'm going to be consistent, I'm going to say that the reason they don't want to go with Trey is because Trey needs refinement and isn't ready to play. So people are immediately like, well, you're not going to trade Trey because you need quarterback, but you need a quarterback that's ready to play. And if your assessment or evaluation is that he's not ready to play, then maybe you would flip him and draft a player. And the fact that they're looking at guys like DTR, who played 5 years at UCLA, Jake Haener, who's a very experienced player after 2 years at UW, 2 years at Fresno State. He's played a lot of football. Clayton Tune, maybe they have interest in him. He's a 4-year starter. Duggan's played a lot. Stetson Bennett's played a lot. I mean, there's a lot of backup quarterbacks that don't have Trey's upside, but they've played a lot of football, and they're probably ready to play off the bench right now. If they move Trey, I think they will move him and go for one of these kind of pseudo veteran rookies that's ready to play, similar to Brock Purdy. They found him last year. Maybe they feel like they can find those traits in a player this year. The other thing I think it has to be mentioned here is if you got 3 quarterbacks, if you have Brock and he's hurt, and you have Trey, but even though you like him and his upside, you don't think he's ready to play, you're going into the season with one quarterback that you feel comfortable playing, and that's a guy who's barely been in your system. At least if you drafted a ready-to-play rookie quarterback, you would go into the year with 2 quarterbacks that are ready to play. And this is the assumption is that Trey's not ready, but I think that's a fair assumption based on the way they've treated him and the way they've brought him along. I mean, just the fact that Darnold's even here kind of makes you wonder how they feel about Trey.
Yeah, no, definitely the fact that you have Darnold, I think that Darnold is going to be better in the 49ers system than people believe. Let's just put that out there. I think there's things about where he's been that I think can give you some idea of where he can go with this group. Now, beyond that, the rookie quarterback thing, yeah, they showed it to you last year with the pickup of, like you said, with the pickup of Brock Purdy. They want a guy who's played a lot. If they're going to do this, they're going after a guy that's played a lot, a guy that can kind of come in here. If they go after a guy like Stetson Bennett, Stetson Bennett becomes the second oldest guy in the room, right? He's already older than Brock Purdy. He's almost the same age as Sam Darnold. So if they go that direction, he's older than than Trey Lance as well. I mean, I think they want to go in the direction of a guy that's played a number of years. If they're going to draft a quarterback, that's what we're going to see. So it'll be interesting to see how the quarterback position shakes out. And again, if they make that move, if they decide if Trey Lance gets traded, if Trey Lance gets dealt, that is because they believe Brock Purdy is going to be healthy. And I know there's a lot of people out there who are speculating on if he's going to be healthy week 1 or not. Some people are saying he's going to end up on the PUP list. Some people saying IR, whatever, those types of things. I'm going to speculate here, and I'm going to say he's going to be ready to go week 1. You know, you look, there's not a lot of people that have had UCL surgeries in terms of NFL quarterbacks. The most recent cases have both been ready much further ahead of what the schedule was. You have Nick Mullins. I understand he's a backup, whatever. He was ready at 5 months. You have a guy that did the full Tommy John surgery, which would have been 12 to 18 months. And he was ready at 7. He actually says he was ready at 6, but they held off for another month. So, you know, the whole procedure, if everything goes according to the plan, even if it goes to full 6 months, which is actually 24 weeks, because that's one of the things that I've been given some heat because I've said his time frame to return, and people are like, hey, that's not 6 months. And if you listen to what the Flyers are saying, they've told you 12 weeks is the time when he will be starting his throwing regimen if everything checks out. That originally was 3 months. Well, that's because the way that the doctors do it is it's in weeks, 12 weeks. That's the 3-month mark, 12 weeks. And that's going to be June 2nd. In terms of if it goes to a full 6 months, that's going to be the 25th of August, which is the day after the final preseason game. I don't think it's going to take that far. I think that he's going to be back on the field with the 49ers probably somewhere around mid-August at the latest. And he's going to be able to have a month of ramp up, and he's going to be ready to go when the 49ers open the season, wherever they open it up.
Wow, that would kind of fall in line more with kind of the tone that Lynch has set, which is, hey guys, this timeline's kind of fluid, and who knows, he might be back in camp and this and that. So we shall see. I don't think anybody knows. I think I think that was one of the concrete things we did get out of the Lynch thing Monday was he was like, hey, we're 6 weeks in. 6 weeks from now, we're going to have a much better idea of exactly the timeline, and it will be a little bit more concrete. Let's hit a couple super chats before we get your thoughts on the pick tonight or the picks tonight. Corey Soto, maybe he's traded. I also think you two might be getting stuck in your own narratives. Longer he's here, less likely he's moved this year. We'll see on that. Ken Martin says, Kyle said Purdy would have been the all caps. You always got to wonder about the all caps guys. Kyle said Purdy would have been the starter. That's been put on hold. It's a good thing. Purdy hurt it. Gives Trey a chance to take his job back, and he will get that opportunity. Okay. We shall see. We shall see. There's a lot that has to come down over the next few days to see before I'm going to feel real confident that I need to hear them actually sound like they're excited about Trey Lance. So far, they don't sound excited. And my big question would be, what do you actually think has changed their opinion? Is it simply that one, do you believe that's an incorrect premise? Do you think that their opinion has not changed? Because that's their claim. Hey, our opinions never change of Trey. We think he's a great guy. Do you think their opinion hasn't changed of Trey, or do we have indications that it has? And if it has, why? Is it simply because Purdy played really well, or do you think it's something that they saw with Trey? All I'll say is the only thing I've seen, Jack, is Trey is a little one-speeded as far as his throws. There's a lot. It's coming out hot, and there's not a lot of touch, timing, accuracy. It's very inconsistent. He throws some balls very well, and he throws other balls very poorly, and he had a high drop rate. He just seems very one-speeded to me, like he lacks touch and timing and feel as a passer. That's where I see development needed. But what do you think has changed? Has anything changed?
Part of it here, I don't know, exactly what's changed from their point of view. I don't know exactly what it is. But one of them could be the fact that they're up against it here when it comes to the salary stuff, because 9.3 this year, like I said, he's going to be a little over 11 next year, and then he's gone. And next year, before next season, they'd have to decide if they want to use the 5th-year option to keep him for a 5th year. And that's going to be like $20 million. Do you want to, somewhere near that range, I believe. Do you want to commit that to a guy who you're not sure about? Or would you rather stick with a guy who's going to cost you $900,000? And I think that all kind of plays into it for the Farmers. And the way that Brock Purdy played over the second half of last season, if they get that the rest of the way, and they can get that for $900,000, so I think it might even be $1 million at his last season, might get to $1 million. If they can get that play for all that time, that allows you to do so many other things with your roster. And Trey Lance and Brock Purdy played at a very high level. I thought he played very well in the playoffs, especially the Cowboy game. I know that people look at the numbers there and kind of scoff at some of what that game was about, but I thought he played really well. I thought it was as good of a quarterbacking job that we've seen from any 49ers quarterback since probably Trey Lance against Carolina out in the 2013 playoffs. You look at some of the numbers of, Steve Young when he was here. The guy's a Hall of Famer, and he struggled with some stuff. And he was a great guy that played great in the regular season. His numbers in the postseason were a little bit up and down. But, I don't think the Farmers always lost because of him. I'm just pointing out, if you look at the numbers of some of these really high-end quarterbacks in the playoffs, their numbers will generally take a dip once you get to the postseason because the level of play is just a little bit different game. And I think Purdy handled it very well, especially in the game against Dallas, and he did what he needed to do to help him win. And the defense played great too, and they had all those weapons to help him. So I just think that Purdy is a guy that fits what they're doing now, and since he fits what they do now, he'll fit what they do next year and the year after that. I think that's the biggest reason.
Couple super chats. Carl says Jimmy smiled at Kyle, and he couldn't say no. There you go. We got that one. And let's see. We got this one from Roll. It says Batman Lives 777. Roll old Holmgren 4 quarterbacks coach to get a tune from Trey Lance. Roll old Holmgren 4 quarterback coach to get a tune from Trey Lance. So in other words, hire. He's basically saying hire Holmgren as a quarterback coach. I've never heard anybody who's either a scout or a coach who really knows pro football and works in pro football really go super positive in the last year and a half on Trey Lance and say, you know what, this is what I see. I think he's going to be great. And it's going to be this, and it's going to be that. I've heard other people on the record who, got paid for their opinion who say that he's not going to be good, but I just haven't heard anybody who gets paid for their opinion who says he is going to be good. That kind of makes me pause. BC4 says, if Levis is there at 3, would you take him in the 3rd round? No. I already stated I'm not taking anybody who puts mayonnaise in their coffee. That right there that's a deal breaker for me. I can't go mayo coffee. 2.0 says it's like we're hoping to get Zach Wilson and have since been trying to keep the world from seeing how bad Trey really is. Kyle Shanahan loves how Purdy opens up the entire playbook. With Trey, it shrinks immensely. If the Jets called and said we'll take Trey Lance for Zach Wilson, would Kyle Shanahan say yes?
Man, I hope he doesn't, because I think Zach Wilson's even. I think Zach.
He's got his own issues.
I would rather have Trey Lance than Zach Wilson. Trey Lance is a better quarterback than Zach Wilson. Zach Wilson was. I didn't think Zach Wilson was the apple of everybody's eye early in that draft, in that year during the season, during the college football season in 2021 or 2020, excuse me. Everybody was talking about Zach Wilson and how we got to get him in San Francisco. We got to get him. And then
his workout? His workout was incredible.
And then you watch him play, and it's like, wait, there's two. Anytime he's got somebody around him, he's awful. Anytime he has any kind of pressure, he folds. And he was able to at BYU. He was throwing out of open pockets, and every once in a while he just take off running and all over the field anytime he saw pressure. That doesn't cut in the NFL. That pick never made sense to me. The love affair of Zach Wilson never made sense to me. The whole thing. That I will say this. I didn't believe there was a quarterback in that draft class that was worth trading up, doing what the 49ers did. I didn't think there was one guy that was worth trading up for. I didn't like Zach Wilson. Trevor Lawrence was going to be Trevor Lawrence. I felt like Trey Lance was probably the best quarterback in the draft behind Mac Jones. I thought the 49ers should have sat at 12, taken Mac Jones, and they would have been just fine. I think if they had taken Mac Jones in 2021, the performance on the field would have been very similar to what we saw this year from Brock Purdy. They would have got that in 2021 from Mac Jones.
If Belichick calls and says, "I don't like Mac Jones anymore. He's an a-hole. I don't want him. Give me Trey Lance for Mac Jones." Does Kyle say yes or no?
I don't know. He wouldn't. I don't think he would because he's got the guy, And I do agree. I think there is that. I do think that it's been proven that to an extent, Mac Jones is an a-hole. I'm looking for. Here's the thing about Mac Jones. There's a group of people who, because they didn't like that I hear from because I said that Jones should be the pick, who I still continue to hear from. And I'll say this: he had a special teams coach and a defensive coordinator calling his plays last year. This year he has Bill O'Brien, who knows what he's doing. Let's see what he does. I think he's going to have a much improved season. He wasn't bad his rookie year. He was the best.
He just doesn't have any he doesn't have any off schedule mobility. He doesn't have special arm strength, but he processes what he sees and the ball comes out on time. If you give him good weapons and protect him, he might be decent. As far as Wilson goes, Zach Wilson, I was a big Zach Wilson fan coming out of BYU. Yeah. But I'll tell you, and I was talking about him to a buddy of mine. And he really convinced me. And he's like, Krug, more than anything, Zach Wilson never played from a muddy pocket at BYU. No. You could always park 3 cars between him and the pass rush. The NFL, I mean, look at Brock Purdy this last year. He constantly was making plays from a muddy pocket. And when I say muddy pocket, I'm talking about there's guys all around him, guys at his feet, guys flying by. You got to step up, and you don't have very much room. There's always people around you. If you can't make plays and comfortably deliver the ball with defenders all around you, the NFL isn't your bag. And that's where I think Zach Wilson's going to struggle. All right, because you're never going to have that. You're never going to have a clear pocket. It's always going to be people in it. I think it's as simple as that. All right, let's get to why I wanted to have you on, which is we're now almost at the end. But the draft today. What do you want? I mean, who do you want to be there? Do you want corner? Do you want a D lineman? You want an offensive lineman? You want an edge rusher? You want a safety? You want a tight end? You going best player available? Who are you looking for at the end of the third round to fall to you? I'll give you, as you're thinking it over, I'll give you 49er website, which is one of my favorite places to go. Brian Rennick. Do you know Brian Rennick?
Yes.
You do know him. Okay, I don't know him. Uh-huh. He has a list of guys, and they're all guys that I love. He's got Marte Mapu from Sac State. Now, granted, I went to Sac State, full disclosure. He's got Yaya Diaby, who is, I think, the number one guy that I would be looking for because I think edge is the number one need. He's got Jaden Reed, the wide receiver from Michigan State. And he has Jair Brown, who would also be the guy that I'd be looking for. I'd be looking for and he's got Sam Laporta as well. I like Yaya Diaby or Jair Brown, the safety from Penn State or the DN from Louisville. And I'll throw in one more, Kaytrell Clark from Louisville, slot corner. To me, those are the 3 guys. The 2 guys from Louisville and Jair Brown are the 3 guys that I'm hoping they're looking at the end of the third round. What do you think? Who do you like? Who you rooting for here?
In terms of at the end of the third round, I think the 49ers' biggest needs really are a safety. I think they need to find a tackle, and I think that they need to the defensive line. I don't see that as big of a need as some people do as far as defensive end. Yeah, on the edge, I don't see that. I think they need to get one, but I don't think they need to make it one of their top priorities. I think they can get one a little bit maybe in round 5 there. So if I was sticking at 99, 101, and 102, I'd take Wanya Morris, the right tackle out of Oklahoma. I would take Jair Brown, the safety out of Penn State, and then attack at the tight end position. That's a little bit of a iffy one, although a lot of them drop. So maybe Tucker Croft will still be there at that point. Or is it Kraft? It's Kraft. I don't want Croft. Kraft.
Yep.
Yeah.
Tucker Kraft from South Dakota State.
Yeah, from South Dakota State. That's one of them there. There's a few of them that could fall. Luca, was it Schoonmaker? He could also
Schoonmaker, yeah, from Michigan.
Schoonmaker. Yeah, thank you. So those are it. I think Wanya Morris, that's a guy who he's a pretty good right tackle. He showed some pretty good athleticism. I think that's the direction that they need to go there. Blake Friedland's might be around. He hasn't played any right side, and we've seen guys sometimes will struggle going from left to right. He's been pretty much just a left tackle with during his time at BYU. So I think those are kind of the guys that I would look for. I think if you're looking for an edge guy, I think you can wait a little bit longer, and that's my edge guy has been the same from throughout. And it's Viliami Fehoko from
Oh
San Jose
yeah.
State. I really like him. If they can get him, with that pick 155, and I think that's the 5th round. If they can get him at that point, that he's the guy, because he gives them he's a nice piece. They can rush the passer, play the run, and he'd be a nice rotational piece behind Drake Jackson.
Yeah, I mean, Fehoko, they call him Junior, I guess, Mountain West Defensive Player of the Year. The motor is just revving at all times. This guy is actually a second cousin of Vita Vea, the
Yep.
Buccaneers' first-round pick a few years ago, and he's from here. He went to St. Francis,
Yep.
and played for San Jose State, and he was a great player playing for Greg Calcagno at St. Francis and Mountain View. And then he goes to San Jose State, and wow, him and Cade Hall were just beasts on that D line. Yeah, Junior Fehoko that would be a nice pick. That would be a
Yeah.
really nice pick.
That's interesting because Cade Hall, his dad, Rhett Hall, played with the 49ers in 94, had a couple of sacks against the Cowboys.
Maybe I'm thinking maybe you get Junior Fehoko in the 5th round, and maybe you get Cade Hall as an undrafted free agent.
I'd be up for that for sure.
Yeah. What do you think, though? Because I'm not a Clellan Ferrell or Austin Bryant fan, and you lost Menahue, Ebukam, Jordan Willis. You lost nearly 700 snaps off the edge. You don't think this is more of a need? I kind of think this is the spot, Jack, where they need a starter. I'm hoping Isaiah Foskey. To me, the one guy I'm praying falls, and I don't think he will, but I think they might trade up for him, is Isaiah Foskey from Notre Dame. I love Michael Mayer, the Notre Dame tight end, and I love Foskey, the Notre Dame D end. Mayer, I think, is going to go in the next 5 picks. Foskey could go maybe at the beginning of the 3rd round. I just think Foskey, the fact that he was at their pro day, I think he's a plug and play starter opposite Nick Bosa in front of their other DNs. To me, I think they need a starting DN. Like, who would you start opposite Bosa if there was a game tomorrow?
Drake Jackson. I would start Drake Jackson tomorrow.
Okay. That's fair.
I know that I understand the fall off that he had in the second half of the year, and give him a full off season in the 49ers strength and conditioning program. I think that's going to help him get ready for year 2. He was a productive player. One of the knocks on Drake Jackson and his performance in year 1 was that a lot of his sacks weren't from just beating the guy around the edges, because the quarterback got flushed, and so he was able to then clean it up. Well, when you have Nick Bosa and Eric Armstead and Javon Hargrave getting pressure on the quarterback, that'd be a nice piece to have. You look at what he did last year, 300, I think it was on 315 snaps, and 200 fewer snaps than he got 3 sacks compared to 5 out of a guy who got 200 more snaps than him. And I'm talking about Samson Ebukam. So you give those snaps and you start playing him all those snaps because he's in there fully. I think he can match the production you got out of Ebukam, maybe even a little bit more, because you're going to have so much pressure. I think the 49ers, if with Eric Armstead being in there, if he stays healthy, the key. I'm giving you a title in one of my shows that I'm going to be doing in the
wait, a little teaser. We're getting a teaser.
The biggest key to the 49ers defensive front this year is Eric Armstead's ability to stay healthy. If Eric Armstead is healthy and he plays the majority of the games, like 15 to 17 games, if he can make the whole season or play 15, this defensive front's going to be better, because Eric Armstead is a big piece of what they do. And he was missing so much last year. And then when he finally hit the field, it took him a few weeks to get going. He made some big plays, even though he wasn't getting sacks. But if he is fully healthy, this 49ers defense is going to eat. That defensive line between him and the guy next to him, you go back to what he did in 2019 when he had the guy next to him in DeForest Buckner, how good his season was that year. If he is healthy, he is going to have a big season for the 49ers in 2023.
The draft starts in less than a half hour. We'll let Jack go here in just a minute, but a couple more thoughts. Colton McKivitz, Barrows had a great piece where he says that Colton McKivitz is maybe a better pass protector than Mike McGlinchey. Is offensive line this year's safety in the draft for the Niners? Last year, we were all like, they got to get a safety. They got to get a safety. They got to get a safety. They didn't get a safety. They stayed with what they had, and they promoted Afanga, and that's it. This year, they got to get a lineman. They got to get an O-lineman. They got to get an O-lineman. But they're telling us that they like Colton McKivitz. The other thing is they brought in Feliciano. Feliciano has started almost his entire career. He's not going to start over Jake Brendel at center, so that means he might play right guard. Is it possible that Spencer Burford, who played right tackle at University of Texas San Antonio, may kick out to right tackle this year? Is it possible that and then I didn't even mention Zakel. I mean, John Lynch shouted out Zakel as having one of the best off seasons. I'm a believer in Nick Zakel. I thought Zakel practiced incredibly well last year as a practice squad guy. Very strong, very smart, huge body, huge frame. Now another year in the offense. I would not be surprised if Nick Zakel was ready to start for them at center, at right guard. Who knows? Maybe even right tackle. Where's Zakel in this mix? Where's Feliciano in this mix? I mean, they went to an NFC Championship game with Tom Compton a couple years ago. Is it possible that we're all reading tackle, 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 and they're actually feel like, hey, with Colton and Burford and Zakel, we feel pretty covered at tackle, and we're gonna think about that maybe day 3. What do you think?
Well, what I found interesting was when John Lynch was asked about Feliciano and right guard, he says it open to him. He said right guard is open to him. It's open. It's there for him. It's that's what I heard him say. He definitely said it's open to him. And so to me, I think that there's a very strong possibility that you're going to see Spencer Burford getting some run at right tackle, and that's where your competition is going to come from. I do think they should add another guy there because you do. If it's not a right tackle, you take the left tackle because you're planning on Trent Brown. That was a long time ago. Trent Williams not being back in a year or two, so you get a guy to take over that left tackle spot. So, I can see Feliciano being your starting right guard, and then I could see your starting right tackle being Spencer Burford. I think there's a possibility there. That's Burford started off his time in the 49ers. That's where he was during minicamp as a rookie. In rookie minicamp, that's where he played. So I could see that being where they tried to give him a shot. Then that means maybe they're going to go guard instead. And we've seen them talk to guys like Mafi from UCLA, and there's a couple of other interior linemen that they've talked to. So maybe the offensive lineman is a direction that they go. But to what you're saying in terms of how everybody's pounding the table, saying like last year was saying you got to get a safety, and they didn't do it. I think that this year is defensive end. Everybody's saying you got to get a defensive end, but you got the defensive end already. Last year it was Talanoa Hufanga. This year is Drake Jackson. And it's funny. I put that out last year. I do this little play, on World According to Garp, 49ers according to Jack, and I kind of put out what I think is going to happen. I put out last year that Talanoa Hufanga is going to be the starting safety of the 49ers. And the responses, if you find that tweet on Twitter, it's hilarious because people are
ripping it.
It's awful. What are you talking about? Don't go
You're
there.
nuts.
Yeah. And the guys that, was an all pro in his first year as a starter. So we'll see. I think that I think tackle is or offensive line is a need. Now, which direction they go with that? Do they decide they want to kick Burford out? I think that's one that I don't think that's crazy. Somebody actually mentioned that to me the other day, not somebody that's with the 49ers or anything like that, but somebody said that he heard it from somebody else that Burford might be kicking out to tackle. So it'll be interesting to keep an eye on that.
Very interesting. And it's funny, I said Hufanga looked like a starter when I saw him in minicamp, and he's kind of leading all the drills. I mean, he was out there literally, him and Jimmy Ward were leading the drills. And I'm like, this guy looks like he's going to start. And people are like, what? No, he's a special teamer. I'm like, well, I don't know. Come to practice. He looks like he's the leader. He's like literally showing everybody else how to do each drill. He was in conversation constantly with D'Amico. You could see Hufanga coming on like storm clouds. PIVC says we think Trey is better than Wilson because Trey hasn't played and nothing is better than Wilson, but neither are better than Purdy and probably Sam Darnold and won't play, so definitely not worth the distraction. Jack, we're going to let you go, man. Great stuff. Once again, Jair Brown.
Jair Brown, maybe Wanya Morris.
Wanya Morris.
Yeah, I like Tucker Kraft. I keep saying Kraft, but I like Kraft.
You're thinking of Tyler Kraft. You're thinking of Kraft last year.
Yeah, I know. That's why I keep getting that.
You got Hassan Reddick on the brain.
It's right. It's going to be Kraft, I think, there. So that's in terms of that one. I also, the Jair, you mentioned that one. Jamie Robinson might be able to be a guy that falls to him at that spot. So, it's kind of interesting because I have on my mock drafts the last couple of times I've actually had them doing some trades and stuff like that. But I just don't see them taking the D end early on. You're going to see them probably go tight end, safety, and tackle today.
T-Dub, if you're fucking with me, I'm gonna block you as soon as this thing's done. I mean, you don't screw with me on rumors. You screw with me on rumors, and I find out you're screwing with me. You're done. You're dead to me, T Dub. He's T Dub says ESPN reporting Niners are very active right now, trying to get into the second round. My contention is they want Michael Mayer, the tight end from Notre Dame, or Isaiah Foskey, the defensive end from Notre Dame. I'm going to hold to it. Those are the two guys they're trying to trade up to get. I would love either of them. To me, Mayer and Kittle would be so damn good. And when I even thought about the idea of trading Trey, I thought, man, if you could trade Trey and turn that into Michael Mayer, I think, is one of the safest picks in the draft. And if you had a double tight end set with Mayer and Kittle, I think that could vault the Niners into the Super Bowl and maybe get that 6th Lombardi. But then when they met with Foskey at the Pro Day, I thought, you know what? He didn't just go down there for nothing, man. He's projected to go in the 30s or 40s, and they don't pick till 90. So to me, Isaiah Foskey, Michael Mayer, I believe that if they're trading into round 2, they're trading into round 2 with those guys in mind. Jack, it's only 18 minutes before round 2. I'm going to let you go, brother. Hey, tell people what you got cooking either the rest of the today or tomorrow or in the days ahead on your channel. You do great stuff, man. Really a huge fan of your work. Tell people what you got cooking and so they can check it out.
Yeah, well, real quick, just a couple things that in terms of it wasn't ESPN that said it, but Peter Schrager says that the 49ers could be active to move up, said the 49ers have already been making calls trying to get up. As far as where they're trading up to, don't know about where that is right now. So just
Foskey or Mayer are their targets. I believe that wholeheartedly.
And then as far as what's going on, check out 49ers.pressdemocrat.com. I'll be doing all the picks as they come up. I'll be adding material there, doing the write-ups on those. And then also check out the channel. Inside the Fires with Jack Hammer. Make sure that I'll be going on with the thoughts on the picks as they come down as well. So that's what I've got going on through the weekend.
Jack, you're the man. Appreciate your time, brother. Enjoy round 2 and round 3, and stay near the phone. We may need to call you back.
There you go. No problem. And go Warriors. Hey, the Warriors, let's get maybe the Fires could just trade up, get all their picks done before 5 o'clock so we can watch the Warriors game. That'd be nice.
Let's all say it together. F the beam. F the beam. All right, Jack, take it easy, brother. There you go. The great Jack Hammer. Good dude. And puts out a bunch of content and says what he thinks. He's an honest man. He says what he thinks. He hustles. He works hard. You know, I'm out there watching practice, and I'm just watching. I got no pen. I got no pad. I'm not making notes. I'm making mental notes, but I ain't writing shit down. Jack is. Jack's writing shit down. And I got nothing but respect for the people who cover this team and grind. And there's just a lot of people who do. And I got great respect for them. Great respect for Grant. Great respect for Hammer. Great respect for Lombardi. Great respect for Barrows. Great respect for Matt Mayoko. Great respect for this guy, Kyle Posey. Go read his story on Niners Nation. 3 players the Niners should target on draft day. Great respect for Jordan Elliott from Niners Nation. Kyle Posey says, Ivan Pace Jr., 5'10", 231-pound linebacker from Cincinnati. I like that. I'll meet that with Charlie Thomas and Carlton Marshall. Go check out those 3 linebackers. They all can flat out play. He's got Zach Harrison, who's a blue chipper, who didn't play that well with the Buckeyes, but man, I'd be interested. If he's there at the end of the 3rd round, this guy is unbelievable size, strength. You got to coach him up, but Chris can coach him up. I like Harrison. And then he's got Schoonmaker from Michigan, and I agree. I think Schoonmaker, once he had that pro day workout in Ann Arbor where he ran 4.63 at 250, this guy's experienced. He played in 44 games. He's always healthy. I like him. I like Schoonmaker quite a bit. So Kyle Posey throwing that out on Niners Nation. Okay. Wait a second. T-Dub. What do we got here? What do we got? We got to go move back on T-Dub. People are now turning on T-Dub. Schrager said it on ESPN. My bad. Schrager said it, though, on ESPN. They're sharing talent back and forth, NFL Network and ESPN. What's the best draft coverage? I like ESPN. I like ESPN over the NFL Network. And I like Daniel Jeremiah, but, what can I say? The Krueg Show, that's probably my son who's at a concert right now out in the middle of the desert. He says, 6 more likes already. Thanks. So hit like and subscribe, everybody. Please do. And you know what? Everybody who knows me knows, hey, if I'm right on Trey, I'm right. If I'm wrong, I will gladly sit here and say, guys, I'm sorry. I was fucking wrong. I own it. I do not run from anything. Ask anybody who's ever bet me anything. If I lose a bet, I pay. So if I lose to Hensley and he doesn't get traded, Hensley's going to lunch on me. By the way, I'm sweating like a dog because it's so hot today here in the creek. Let me read the super chat. Read the starred chats. Gregus Khan, who sometimes takes shots, says, according to Forster, McKivitz is an upgrade in pass protection over Mike McGlinchey. Yeah, that was from the Barrows piece. That was a good point. Gregus, according to some ESPN talking heads, the Seahawks are the NFC West favorite. Yeah, seriously, come on. Louis Riddick? What are you talking about? They went 0-3 against the Niners last year. Seattle's favored. There's no way. Sacktown Izzy, looks like Krueg was wrong about Lance being traded. All right, we'll see. Gregus, Larry has moved the goalpost until the draft is over, and then it'll be the deadline before he'll admit defeat. No, I will admit defeat on Saturday if I'm wrong. Ken Martin, who's, I think, one of our sharpest texters, I got to be honest, and sometimes he rips. He says, Krueg said the Niners would take a third for Lance. He don't think it's over. I do. I do think they'll take a third for Lance. Guys, I think they'd take a fifth in Montez Sweat. I think I would take a fifth in Montez Sweat. Scotch says, Larry, if Trey does get traded, we get Titans number 41. What defensive tackle is available? Byron Young. Amazing under-the-radar player for Bama. I know that's amazing that we could even say that there's an under-the-radar player who played at Alabama, but everybody's been talking about Byron Young from Tennessee. Go watch Byron Young, who went to high school in Mississippi. I think was a 5-star, went to Bama, 34.5-inch arms. Awesome against the run, and if you watch him, he's really explosive getting off blocks. I like Byron Young from Alabama a lot. I think he's good. James Foster, the only person with more groupies than Taylor Swift is Trey Lance. Carl, I think he gets traded to the Patriots. Okay. Ken, Grant Cohn said in a video last night that he heard Trey Lance might get traded to the Titans. Put it down. Greg Stillwell, Niners botched Trey's career by intentionally breaking his ankle. Really? If memory serves, he had the job at that point. Yeah, then nobody intentionally broke anybody's anything. Though I didn't like that play call, and I don't like the idea of running my quarterback between the tackles. Period. Alex says people are too emotionally invested in this topic. Probably myself included. Greg Stillwell says Rivera said the Commanders are committed to Sam Howell. Well, of course you're going to say that. Otherwise, you're going to pay through the nose in a trade. Don't listen to what people say. Listen to what they do or watch what they do. That's what matters more. People say a lot of things. This is what they call the lying season. Alex, Larry, not worried about taking L's. Yeah, I'm not. What am I going to get fired from my own YouTube channel? Michael, I have a strong feeling Trey will be traded, and the Niners love the knowledge of Haener and will go after him when it's time. I've heard that a couple times. Rafe Campbell, isn't it possible that both of these are true? Larry thinks the Niners are trading Trey Lance, their words, actions, and no one wants to wait on a project. And 2, Larry likes Trey and thinks he will be good. Which I think I like Trey more than the Niners like Trey. Joey Nichols, who also is a great texter, has a lot of knowledge, but sometimes rips. Laughing my ass off, just a blanket opinion that nobody likes Lance. Oh, but Larry loves him, LOL. No, what I was saying is nobody that I've heard, and I will stand corrected if you can correct me on this, nobody that I've heard that is credible on personnel or coaching or NFL. No GM, no scout, no personnel executive, no coach, no ex-coach. Nobody who's actually tied to the NFL. I'm not talking about content creators. I'm not talking about fans. I'm not talking about media people. I'm talking about people who worked in the NFL. I've never heard any of them compliment Trey Lance. It's amazing. I don't know why. Not one. You would think there'd be one guy who's like, yeah, Louis Riddick. Louis Riddick said that he thought Trey Lance could win the MVP. He's the one guy. He is the one guy. Batman Lives, once again, roll out Holmgren for quarterback coach to get a tune from Trey Lance. Ken Martin, Marte Mapu, DTR, Yaya Diaby, Dante Stills, Catrell Clark, Braden Willis, Nick Saldiveri, safety Jair Brown, Xavier Smith. Wow, that's a deep pull. That's Florida A&M, baby. Jake Moody and Roshan Johnson. That's your draft. Hey, by the way, if the Niners go running back early, that's my prediction. Roshan Johnson. Something about Roshan Johnson. There's a lot to like there. I think they always go running back seemingly earlier than they probably should. Roshan Johnson is a hell of a player, and he's a great leader. He's a locker room presence. He's a great blocker. He could play fullback, halfback, straight line speed. We don't know much about Roshan because of Bijan Robinson. If Roshan had been the only back at UT, he would probably go in the second round. Instead, he's probably going to go in the fifth round. GD5 Sports, I like Diaby more than Byron Young. I do too. You talking about Byron Young from Tennessee? I like Diaby more. He's got better bend. He's got better strength. He had more production. Mark 187, the Fs are flying fast and furious with Larry tonight. Tonight's going to be epic. Tonight we're doing post-game on the draft and post-game on Warriors Kings. All right. And I'm already sweating. I got to turn the fan on. Next time I start one of these live streams without turning the fan on. Whew, it's hot in here. It is hot in here. It's getting hot in here, as 50 would say. GD5 Sports, Yaya Diaby would look great in red and gold. He looked good in red and black. Joey Nichols. I love JT Sullivan as a content creator, but he was a complete and utter disaster as our quarterback. I don't know. Maybe Mike Martz. Have you heard of this thing called pass protection? We got this one from Nacho Business. Nacho Business. CMC restructured so we can sign Robbie Gold. Love to see Robbie Gold come back. Absolutely would. All right, let's get a word from our sponsors. We're brought to you by Pig and a Pickle. Awesome spot. Check them out. Corte Madera, Emeryville. This is their spot in Marin.
So New York style sausage was started over 70 years ago. We are the largest producer of fresh Italian sausage on the West Coast.
What makes our sausage in New York style is really the recipe came from back east, from New York, from Connecticut.
If you look at all of our labels, there's maximum 4 or 5 ingredients, which we're really proud of.
There's no preservatives, no MSG, fresh in, fresh out.
The pork comes in fresh, goes out fresh. There's never any freezing throughout the process. We've always used fine quality cuts. We're never going to deter from that. It's one of the reasons why our sausage is so good. I guarantee you put our sausage up against anybody else's from a flavor standpoint, no one will beat it. Hands down.
Hey, do yourself a favor and do me a favor. Go buy a package of the New York style Italian sausage. Guaranteed you will love it. Guaranteed.
All right, good show. Thanks to Jack Hammer. Thanks to all of you. Thank you for everybody on the super chats. Very kind and generous of you guys. Really appreciate that kindly. Check out tonight, man. Tonight's post-game show is going to set a record. We're going to have 2,000 people hanging in the room. We got post-game Warriors. Cyrus Satsis from Locked On Warriors will be in the house. John Dickinson from 95.7 The Game will be in the house. Frank Red will be in the house. Bay Area Baller will be in the house. Baller's fired up to talk Niners as well. Danny, Rye, should be a blowout. All of you, you're all welcome. Tomorrow, Alex Barber's back with us to recap the draft. That's going to be great. That kid was phenomenal yesterday from Dallas, Texas. And tonight, we're going to be talking about a lot. We're going to be talking about round 2, round 3, the 3 new 49ers. If there are 3 new 49ers, do the Niners trade up for Michael Mayer or Isaiah Foskey? Because that's what I predict they will do. Or do they stick there at 99, 101, 102 and pick? Do they pick a quarterback? Do they trade Trey Lance? There's so much going on. You got Warriors Kings tonight. Fuck the beam. Tonight's our night. Good night, Sacramento. And I love all you people up there, by the way. But this is it. This is it. We ain't going back to the Golden One for Game 7 on Sunday. G. Martinez says, take a shower, Larry. Yeah, seriously. I took a shower, and now I need to take another shower. I'm sweating like a dog. All right, that does it. Enjoy the draft. It starts, second round starts in 2 minutes and 30 seconds. I will be there in front of my television. I want to see all of you guys here in the post game. Go Warriors, F the beam. And that does it for us. Thanks to everybody. See you later on tonight on The Krueg Show.
Yeah, never met a man I've been scared of. Careful, you gon' get exactly what you asked for. Here for whatever you